The envelope had been sitting on Fletcher Irving's desk for 3 weeks before he finally opened it. And now he stood in the parking lot of Westbrook High School, wondering why he had bothered showing up at all. 20 years. 2 decades since he walked these halls as an awkward 17-year-old with thick glasses, second-hand clothes, and dreams too big for the cramped apartment he shared with his mother. Fletcher adjusted his watch, a Patek Philippe that cost more than most people's cars, and took a slow breath. The irony was not lost on him. Back then, he would have given anything to be somebody. Now that he was somebody, he would have given anything to be invisible again. The gymnasium was decorated with silver and blue streamers, the school colors he had nearly forgotten. A banner stretched across the far wall read Class of 2006, 20-year reunion, in glittering letters. Fletcher recognized almost no one. They had all gotten older, obviously, but more than that, they had become strangers. The football players had developed beer bellies. The cheerleaders had traded their pom-poms for strollers and minivans. Everyone seemed to be showing off photos on their phones, competing to see whose life looked better on social media. He grabbed a beer from the refreshment table and found a corner near the old trophy case. His plan was simple: stay for an hour, make small talk with whoever approached him, then leave and never think about this place again. Fletcher Irving, a man with thinning hair and a wide smile, approached. "Holy hell, I heard you were some big shot now. Telecommunications, right?" "Satellite technology," Fletcher corrected politely, though he did not recognize the man's face. Right. I read about you in Forbes. What was it, 3 billion? Something like that." Fletcher took a long drink of his beer. The number was actually closer to 5 billion now, but he did not feel like getting into it. The man launched into a story about his car dealership, and Fletcher nodded at appropriate intervals while his eyes wandered across the gym. Most of the decorations were the same as senior prom. Same streamers, same tired DJ setup, same awkward energy of people trying too hard to have fun. His gaze drifted past clusters of familiar but not faces, past the dance floor where a few brave souls were attempting to move to an outdated pop song, and then stopped completely. Winona Grant stood near the punch bowl, laughing at something a woman beside her had said. Her head was tilted back slightly, exposing the elegant line of her throat, and even from across the room, Fletcher could see the way her eyes crinkled at the corners. She wore a simple red dress that hugged her figure without being ostentatious, and her dark hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders. The man was still talking about invoice financing or interest rates, or something equally dull, but Fletcher could not hear him anymore. All the sound in the gymnasium had compressed into a distant hum. 20 years collapsed into nothing. He was 17 again, sitting in the back row of AP Literature, watching Winona debate the symbolism in The Great Gatsby with the teacher. She had been brilliant, passionate, completely out of his league. He had never even spoken to her beyond a few mumbled exchanges about homework. "Excuse me," Fletcher said abruptly, cutting off the car dealership story mid-sentence. He walked away without waiting for a response. His feet carried him across the gym floor with more confidence than he actually felt. Winona was still laughing, her whole face lit up with genuine amusement, and Fletcher felt something twist in his chest. When he was 10 feet away, she turned and looked directly at him. The laughter faded from her expression, replaced by curiosity, then recognition, then something else he could not quite name. "Fletcher," she said, and hearing his name in her voice made his heart do something stupid and adolescent. "Winona." "Hi." He managed what he hoped was a normal smile. "It has been a long time. 20 years. She studied his face with an intensity that made him feel exposed. "You look different, good different. LASIK surgery and a decent tailor, he said, which was mostly true. He had also spent the last 2 decades building muscle in expensive gyms and learning how to carry himself like someone who belonged in boardrooms and galas. You look exactly the same. Liar. But she smiled when she said it. The woman beside her excused herself tactfully, and suddenly it was just the two of them standing there while the terrible DJ played a song that had been overplayed even in 2006. "I am serious," Fletcher said. "You were the smartest person in every class we had together. I used to sit in the back and watch you destroy people's arguments in debates." Winona's eyebrows lifted. "You remember that? I remember everything about you." The words came out before he could stop them, too honest and too raw. He saw her eyes widen slightly, and he scrambled to recover. "I mean, you were hard to forget. Everyone knew who you were." "I definitely did not know who you were," Winona admitted. "I mean, I recognized your name when I saw it in the news a few years ago and I dug out my old yearbook to check. But in school, I do not think we ever really talked." "We did not." Fletcher took another drink to hide his discomfort. "I was not exactly social." "Neither was I, really. I just faked it better." She glanced around the gym with barely concealed disdain. "Half the people here used to make fun of me for actually caring about grades. Now they want to act like we were all best friends." "Then why did you come?" Winona shrugged. "Curiosity, mostly. I wanted to see how everyone turned out. What about you?" "I would think a billionaire has better things to do on a Saturday night than hang out in a high school gym." "You would think," Fletcher agreed. Something about her directness made him relax slightly. She was not trying to impress him or angle for something. She was just being honest. "I almost did not come, but I figured I owed it to my younger self to see this place one more time." "And how does it feel? Smaller than I remembered. Sadder, maybe." He met her eyes. "Better now, though." A flush crept up Winona's neck, just visible above the neckline of her dress. "That is quite a line." "It is not a line." They stared at each other for a long moment. The DJ transitioned into a slow song and couples began pairing off on the dance floor. Fletcher made a decision that would have been impossible for his 17-year-old self. "Dance with me," he said. "Here." "Why not? We paid our entrance fee. We might as well get something out of it." Winona hesitated, then placed her hand in his. Her palm was warm and soft, and Fletcher felt the contact travel up his arm like electricity. He led her onto the dance floor and pulled her close, one hand at her waist and the other still holding hers. She fit against him perfectly, as if they had done this 1,000 times before. "So what have you been doing for the last 20 years?" Fletcher asked as they swayed to the music. "Besides staying beautiful and being brutally honest with billionaires." "Teaching high school English," Winona said. "Before you ask, yes, it is as exhausting as it sounds, and no, I do not regret it. I love it actually, most days." "Where?" "Lincoln Academy across town. It is a charter school, mostly kids from rough backgrounds. They remind me of me in a way, smart but struggling, you know." Fletcher did know. He knew exactly what she meant. "That is incredible. Really." "It does not pay well," Winona said with a wry smile. "I am guessing your satellite company is slightly more profitable than my salary." "Slightly." He spun her gently under his arm and she laughed. "But profit is not everything. You are actually making a difference. Half my employees could not even explain what our satellites do." "Can you?" "Of course. We provide high-speed internet access to rural and underserved areas, but I will not bore you with the technical details." "I might like the technical details," Winona said. "I always liked how things worked, the mechanics of it." So Fletcher told her, and she listened with the same focused intensity he remembered from high school. She asked smart questions, challenged his assumptions, and made connections he had not considered. They kept dancing even after the slow song ended, swaying through upbeat numbers that neither of them acknowledged. Other couples came and went, and Fletcher was vaguely aware of people staring at them, but he did not care. "I have a confession," Winona said eventually. "I looked you up after I saw your name in the Forbes article. I read everything I could find about you. That must have been boring." "Actually, it was fascinating. You started your company with $50,000 and a rented office space. You worked 100-hour weeks for 5 years straight. You almost went bankrupt 3 times before your first major contract came through. And now you are one of the richest people under 40 in the country." She tilted her head. "What I could not figure out from all those articles was why. What made you want it so badly?" Fletcher was quiet for a moment, considering how much to reveal. "I grew up poor," he said finally. "Like stealing toilet paper from public restrooms poor. My mom worked 3 jobs to keep us fed, and I wore the same pair of shoes for 4 years because we could not afford new ones. Every single day, I felt invisible. People looked right through me like I did not matter." He met her eyes. "I wanted to matter. I wanted to be someone people could not ignore. And now you are." "Now I am," he agreed. "But it turns out that being rich does not fix the feeling of being invisible. It just changes who is doing the looking." Winona's expression softened. "I get that. Different circumstances, but I get it. My parents expected me to be perfect. Perfect grades, perfect behavior, perfect daughter. I spent my whole childhood performing for them, trying to earn love I should have just had. It was not until college that I realized I could just be myself. Messy, opinionated, imperfect me." "I like messy, opinionated, imperfect you," Fletcher said. "You do not even know me. Then let me." The words hung between them, heavy with possibility. "Have dinner with me, tomorrow night." Winona bit her lip, and Fletcher could see her thinking it through, weighing risks and rewards. "I do not know if that is a good idea." "Why not?" "Because you are a billionaire, Fletcher. You live in a completely different world than I do. You probably have a penthouse in Manhattan and a private jet and staff to manage your staff. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment and drive a Honda Civic with 120,000 miles on it. What exactly do you think is going to happen here?" "I think we are going to have dinner and get to know each other," Fletcher said calmly. "And then maybe we will have dinner again, and maybe we will discover that we actually like each other. The rest we can figure out as we go. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Everything else is just noise." He squeezed her hand gently. "But if you are not interested, just say so. I can take rejection. I have had plenty of practice." That made her smile. "Somehow I doubt that. You would be surprised. Most of the women I meet are more interested in my bank account than my personality. It gets old fast." Winona studied his face for a long moment, and Fletcher forced himself to stay still under her scrutiny. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, dinner, but somewhere normal, please. No Michelin-starred restaurants or private dining rooms. I want to see if we can actually have a conversation without all the billionaire theatrics." "Deal." Relief flooded through him. "Give me your number." They exchanged phones and programmed in their contacts. Fletcher noticed that her phone was an older model with a cracked screen protector, and something about that small detail made him like her even more. She was real in a way that most people in his life were not. The DJ announced last call, and Fletcher realized with a start that they had been talking for nearly 3 hours. The gymnasium was half empty now, with only the most dedicated partiers still hanging around. Winona's friend from earlier appeared at her elbow, keys in hand and an amused expression on her face. "Ready to go, Win?" the friend asked. "Yeah." Winona turned back to Fletcher. "I guess I will hear from you tomorrow, you will," he promised. He watched her walk away, red dress swaying with each step, and felt something click into place inside his chest. It was the same feeling he got when a business deal came together perfectly or when a new technology worked exactly as designed. The feeling of rightness, of everything aligning. Dude, was that Winona Grant? The car dealership guy was back, appearing at Fletcher's shoulder with the persistence of a telemarketer. I heard she is still single. You should totally hit that. Fletcher turned and fixed the man with a look that had made venture capitalists squirm. Do not talk about her like that, he said quietly. In fact, do not talk about her at all. The guy held up his hands defensively. Whoa, sorry man, did not realize you were that serious about her. I am. Fletcher was surprised by how much he meant it. He had known Winona, really known her, for less than 4 hours. But sometimes that was all it took. Sometimes you just knew. He left the reunion shortly after, climbing into the back of the town car that had been waiting for him in the parking lot. His driver, Marcus, glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Good evening, sir, Marcus asked. Better than expected, Fletcher said. He pulled out his phone and stared at Winona's contact information. It would be too eager to text her now, would not it? He should wait until tomorrow morning at least. Show some restraint. He sent the text anyway. I know I am supposed to wait and play it cool, but I had a really great time tonight. Thank you for taking a chance on me. The response came back within a minute. Who says you are supposed to play it cool? I had a great time too. I am looking forward to tomorrow. Fletcher smiled at his phone like an idiot, and Marcus politely pretended not to notice. The next 24 hours passed with agonizing slowness. Fletcher tried to work, but he could not focus on the quarterly reports or the merger negotiations. His assistant, Rebecca, noticed immediately. You are distracted, she observed, setting a coffee on his desk. Did something happen at your reunion? I met someone, Fletcher admitted. Rebecca's eyebrows shot up. Like met someone, or just met someone, the first one. Well. Rebecca settled into the chair across from his desk with the familiarity of someone who had worked with him for 8 years. Tell me everything. Is she after your money? No. She is a high school English teacher who drives a beat-up Honda and has no interest in my bank account. So she is a unicorn. Got it. Rebecca grinned. Where are you taking her? She said somewhere normal. No Michelin stars or private dining rooms. Then take her to Antonio's. That little Italian place in Brooklyn. The one you always order takeout from. Fletcher considered this. Antonio's was casual, comfortable, and the food was genuinely excellent. It was also completely unpretentious, which seemed like exactly what Winona wanted. Perfect. Can you make a reservation for 7? Already done, Rebecca said, tapping away on her phone. And Fletcher, try not to screw this up. You deserve to be happy. Thanks, Rebecca. I mean it. You are a good guy who works too hard and spends too much time alone. If this woman is half as great as you think she is, do not let the money thing get in the way. Fletcher nodded, but Rebecca's words stuck with him for the rest of the day. Money had always been his solution to problems. Need better technology? Buy it. Need better employees? Hire them. Need a bigger market share? Acquire your competitors. But money could not solve this. If anything, his wealth was an obstacle, something he needed to navigate around rather than leverage. He picked Winona up at 6:30, driving himself in a Tesla that was expensive but not ostentatiously so. She lived in a modest apartment complex with peeling paint and a broken fountain out front. When she came down the stairs in jeans and a green sweater that brought out the flecks of gold in her hazel eyes, Fletcher felt his breath catch. You look beautiful, he said. You clean up pretty well yourself. She slid into the passenger seat and looked around the car with interest. I have never been in a Tesla before. Is it true they basically drive themselves? The autopilot feature is pretty advanced, but I prefer to drive manually. Fletcher pulled out of the parking lot. I like being in control. Control freak tendencies. I will add that to my list of things I am learning about Fletcher Irving. What else is on the list? Well, you are direct. You do not play games or waste time. You are confident without being arrogant, which is rare for someone with your money, and you are surprisingly easy to talk to. She glanced at him. Also, you have excellent taste in cars, but that might just be my ignorance speaking. Fletcher laughed. I will take it. What else should I know about you, Winona Grant? I am stubborn. Like, unreasonably stubborn sometimes. I hate being told what to do, even when the advice is good. I read at least 5 books a month, mostly literary fiction and poetry. I have a cat named Fitzgerald who is an absolute menace. And I cry at basically every movie, even the ones that are not sad. That all sounds perfect to me. Wait until you meet Fitzgerald. He has destroyed 2 couches and a curtain set. You might change your mind. They arrived at Antonio's, and Fletcher was relieved to see that it was exactly as casual as he remembered. Checkered tablecloths, candles in wine bottles, Frank Sinatra playing softly in the background. The owner, Antonio himself, greeted them warmly and showed them to a corner booth. Your usual. Antonio asked Fletcher in a thick Italian accent. Whatever you recommend tonight, Fletcher said. We are feeling adventurous. Over pasta and wine they talked. Really talked in a way Fletcher had not talked to anyone in years. Winona told him about her students, about the kid who had written a stunning essay on James Baldwin, and the girl who was failing because she worked 2 jobs to help her family. She talked about the bureaucracy of the school system, the impossible standardized tests, the way funding cuts meant she bought supplies out of her own pocket more often than not. It sounds frustrating, Fletcher said. It is, but it is also the most important thing I have ever done. These kids, they are brilliant, Fletcher. They just need someone to believe in them and give them the tools to succeed. If I can do that for even a few of them, then all the frustration is worth it. Fletcher found himself telling her about his company, but also about the parts of running a business that no one put in Forbes articles. The constant pressure, the fear of failure, the loneliness that came with being the one making all the final decisions. He told her about the early days when he slept in his office because he could not afford an apartment and ate ramen for weeks at a time. He told her about the investor who laughed in his face and the partner who embezzled $50,000 and nearly destroyed everything. How did you survive all that? Winona asked. Spite mostly, Fletcher said, and she laughed. I wanted to prove everyone wrong. I wanted to show them that the poor kid from Queens could build something that mattered. You did more than that. You changed an entire industry. Maybe. But sometimes I wonder what the point of all of it is. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I have houses I never visit and cars I never drive. What am I actually doing with any of it? Winona reached across the table and took his hand. You are employing thousands of people. You are connecting rural communities to the internet, which means access to education and opportunities they would not have otherwise. That matters, Fletcher. Do not downplay it. Her hand was warm in his, and Fletcher realized he never wanted to let go. They stayed at the restaurant until Antonio started giving them pointed looks and stacking chairs on tables around them. Even then, Fletcher was reluctant for the evening to end. Walk with me, he asked when they were back outside. It is freezing, Winona pointed out, but she was smiling. Fletcher shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It was too big on her, and she looked adorable swimming in the expensive fabric. They walked through Brooklyn as the city hummed around them, past bodegas and brownstones and late-night diners. Their shoulders bumped companionably, and every point of contact felt significant. Can I ask you something? Winona said eventually. Why did you never talk to me in high school? I mean, you said you noticed me, but you never even tried to start a conversation. Fletcher took a breath. Because I was terrified. You were this brilliant, confident person, and I was nobody. I figured you would never waste your time on someone like me. That is sad. Which part? All of it. The fact that you thought you were nobody. The fact that I was so wrapped up in my own problems that I did not notice you. The fact that we wasted 20 years we could have known each other. She stopped walking and turned to face him. But maybe we were not ready then. Maybe we needed those 20 years to become people who could actually appreciate each other. I appreciate you, Fletcher said softly. More than you know. Winona rose up on her toes and kissed him. It was soft and sweet and over too quickly. When she pulled back, her cheeks were flushed. I have been wanting to do that since the reunion, she admitted. Fletcher cupped her face in his hands and kissed her again, properly this time. She tasted like wine and possibility, and he felt something inside him shift and settle. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Come on, Fletcher said, taking her hand. Let me drive you home. They made out in the car like teenagers, Winona half in his lap and Fletcher's hands tangled in her hair. It was undignified and perfect, and Fletcher could not remember the last time he had felt this alive. When they finally came up for air, Winona was laughing. I am too old for this, she gasped. We are 38. That is not old. Tell that to my back. But she kissed him again anyway, gentler this time. I should go inside. I have to grade papers tomorrow, on a Sunday. The life of a teacher is never done. She climbed back into her own seat and attempted to fix her hair. When can I see you again? Tomorrow, or today, technically, since it is after midnight. You are very persistent. I know what I want, Fletcher said, and I want you. Winona smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Tomorrow, then, but I get to pick the activity. Deal. He watched her go inside, waiting until she was safely in her apartment before driving away. His phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. How did it go? Better than I hoped, Fletcher typed back. I think I am in trouble. Good trouble or bad trouble, the best kind. Over the next few weeks, Fletcher and Winona fell into a rhythm. They saw each other almost every day, fitting dates around her teaching schedule and his board meetings. She showed him her world, gallery openings in Queens, used bookstores in Manhattan, late-night poetry readings in coffee shops. He showed her his, charity galas, rooftop restaurants, Broadway shows from box seats, but the best moments were the quiet ones. Sitting in her apartment with Fitzgerald, the menace cat curled between them, reading in comfortable silence. Cooking dinner together in his penthouse kitchen while she teased him about his pathetic knife skills. Walking through Central Park on Sunday mornings, hand in hand, talking about everything and nothing. Fletcher had never been happier. He had also never been more terrified. I am falling in love with her, he told Rebecca one afternoon in his office. Obviously, Rebecca said. You have been walking around with this dopey smile for weeks. It is disgusting. What if it does not work out? What if she realizes how incompatible our lives are? Then you will be heartbroken and miserable for a while, and then you will move on. But at least you will have tried. That is more than most people can say. Rebecca softened. Look, I have watched you build an empire from nothing. I have seen you negotiate billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. If you want this to work with Winona, you will make it work. Have some faith in yourself. Fletcher nodded, but the fear stayed with him. It crystallized a few days later when he invited Winona to a fundraising gala for a children's literacy organization. She said yes, then showed up at his penthouse looking nervous in a simple black dress. Is this okay? She asked, gesturing at the dress. I do not really have fancy event clothes. I borrowed this from my friend Claire. You look stunning, Fletcher said honestly, But also, it does not matter what you wear. You are with me, and that is all anyone will care about. The gala was at a 5-star hotel in Midtown, the kind of place with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Fletcher kept Winona close, one hand on the small of her back as they navigated through the crowd. People stared. They always stared when he showed up with a date, but this felt different. More speculative. Fletcher saw the calculations in their eyes, the wondering about who Winona was and what she did, and whether she was worthy of the billionaire Fletcher Irving. It made him furious. Fletcher Irving. A woman in a dress that probably cost more than Winona's monthly rent swooped down on them. "I've been trying to get a meeting with you for months. Did your assistant tell you about my proposal?" "She did," Fletcher said neutrally. "We will be in touch." The woman finally seemed to notice Winona. "And who is this?" "Winona Grant," Winona said before Fletcher could introduce her. "I teach high school English." "How quaint," the woman said in a tone that made it clear she thought it was anything but. She turned back to Fletcher. "Anyway, I really think you should consider investing in my startup. We are revolutionizing the wellness industry." Fletcher extricated them as politely as possible, but the damage was done. Winona was quiet through dinner, picking at her plate. She made polite conversation with the people at their table, all of whom were wealthy donors or tech industry insiders, but Fletcher could see the tension in her shoulders. "Want to get out of here?" he murmured in her ear during dessert. She nodded gratefully. They left before the speeches, slipping out a side door. Winona did not say anything until they were back at his penthouse, and even then she waited until she was changed into the sweats she kept in his dresser. "I do not belong in your world," she said quietly. Fletcher's stomach dropped. "Winona." "No, let me finish. Those people tonight, they looked at me like I was some kind of novelty, the poor teacher dating the billionaire. I could see them wondering what you see in me, and honestly, I am wondering the same thing. That is ridiculous. You are brilliant and kind and more real than anyone at that gala. But I am not rich. I am not powerful. I do not know how to navigate those social situations or make small talk about startups and market shares. I felt like a fraud all night." Fletcher crossed the room and took her hands. "You are not a fraud. Those people are frauds. They are shallow and materialistic, and most of them would not know a genuine emotion if it hit them in the face. You are the most authentic person I have ever met, and that is exactly what I love about you." Winona looked up at him, eyes wide. "Love." Fletcher realized what he had said. There was no taking it back now, and honestly, he did not want to. "Yes. Love. I am in love with you, Winona. I have been since the reunion, maybe even since high school. And if you think I care about whether you fit into that fake world of galas and fundraisers, then you have not been paying attention. I do not care about any of that. I care about you." "Fletcher." Winona's eyes were shining with tears. "You do not have to say it back," he continued. "I just need you to know how I feel, and I need you to know that I am not going anywhere. If my money makes you uncomfortable, I will give it away. If my lifestyle is too much, I will change it. Just do not walk away from this. From us." Winona stood on her toes and kissed him, hard and desperate. "I love you too," she said against his mouth. "I am terrified and completely out of my depth, but I love you too." They made love that night with a new intensity. Every touch weighted with emotion. Afterward, they lay tangled together in Fletcher's California king bed, and he felt something inside him finally relax. This was real. This was happening. He was not going to lose her. "I have an idea," Fletcher said, stroking her hair. "What if we found a way to combine our worlds instead of choosing between them?" "What do you mean? Your school, Lincoln Academy. You said they are struggling with funding, right? Always. We are barely keeping the lights on most months. What if I help? Not just a donation, but real, sustained support. Technology upgrades, teacher salaries, scholarships for students who want to go to college. I could set up a foundation specifically for schools like yours. Winona propped herself up on one elbow. Are you serious? Completely. I have been looking for ways to make my money matter, to do something more than just accumulate wealth. This would be perfect. We could work on it together. Your expertise in education and my resources. We would make a hell of a team. Fletcher, that would be incredible. Do you have any idea how many students we could help? Thousands if we do it right. Maybe tens of thousands eventually. He pulled her back down against his chest. I spent so many years thinking money was the point, but it is not. The point is what you do with it, the legacy you build. And I cannot think of a better legacy than giving kids like we used to be a real chance. Winona kissed him softly. Have I mentioned that I love you? You might have said something about it. They spent the next several months turning Fletcher's idea into reality. He hired lawyers and accountants to set up the foundation properly. Winona consulted with other teachers and administrators to identify the biggest needs. They worked late into the night at his dining room table, surrounded by papers and plans and possibilities. Lincoln Academy was their first major project. Fletcher's foundation paid for new computers, updated textbooks, higher teacher salaries, and a scholarship program for graduates. The transformation was immediate and dramatic. Test scores improved. College acceptance rates doubled. Teachers who had been ready to quit stayed on, reinvigorated by suddenly having the resources they needed. Winona cried when she saw the first batch of scholarship checks go out. This is real, she said, clutching Fletcher's hand. We are actually changing lives. You were always changing lives, Fletcher said. Now you just have better tools to do it with. They expanded to other schools, then to entire districts. The foundation became Fletcher's primary focus, and he stepped back from the day-to-day operations of his satellite company to manage it full-time. His board of directors thought he was crazy, but Fletcher had never been more certain of anything. Well, almost anything. He had one more thing to be certain about. It was a Saturday morning in the spring, nearly a year after the reunion. Fletcher and Winona were in Central Park, walking the same paths they had walked dozens of times before. Fitzgerald was even there, on a leash that he tolerated with immense dignity. The trees were in bloom, and the air smelled like flowers and possibility. Fletcher had been carrying the ring in his pocket for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. But there was never going to be a perfect moment, and he had learned that the best things in life required taking risks. Winona, he said, stopping on a bridge over a small pond. She turned to him, smiling. Yeah. Fletcher dropped to one knee right there on the bridge, pulling out the ring box. It was a simple platinum band with a single diamond, elegant without being ostentatious. Winona gasped. I know we have not been together that long, Fletcher said. And I know our lives are complicated and sometimes messy. But I also know that I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. You make me want to be better. You make me want to use my life for something meaningful. I cannot imagine a future without you in it. So, Winona Grant, will you marry me? Winona was crying, which he had expected, but she was also laughing. Yes, she said. Yes, of course, yes. Fletcher slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then stood and kissed her while a small crowd of strangers applauded. Even Fitzgerald seemed pleased, winding around their legs and purring loudly. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the Botanical Gardens. No billionaire spectacle, no society wedding. Just their closest friends and family, simple vows, and a reception in a rented hall with a DJ who played all the songs they loved. Fletcher's mother cried through the entire ceremony. Winona's parents, who had flown in from Oregon, seemed bemused by the whole thing but genuinely happy for their daughter. Rebecca was Winona's maid of honor, and she gave a toast that had everyone laughing and crying. "I have worked with Fletcher for almost a decade," Rebecca said, "and I have never seen him as happy as he is with Winona. She turned a workaholic billionaire into an actual human being with emotions and everything. It is honestly disturbing, but in the best possible way." Fletcher's best man, a college friend named Marcus who now worked as his driver, was equally embarrassing. "Fletcher used to tell me he did not have time for relationships," Marcus said. "He was too busy building his empire." And then he went to a high school reunion and met the woman he had been crushing on for 20 years, and suddenly he had all the time in the world. It is almost like love is more important than money. Who knew? They honeymooned in Italy. 2 weeks of wine and pasta and exploring ancient ruins. Winona practiced her terrible Italian on patient locals. Fletcher took 1,000 photos of her laughing, her head thrown back in joy. They made love in hotel rooms with views of the Mediterranean and woke up tangled together under Egyptian cotton sheets. "I could get used to this," Winona admitted one evening as they sat on their hotel balcony watching the sunset. "The fancy hotels or being married to me. Both." She leaned her head on his shoulder, but mostly the second thing. When they returned to New York, they moved into a new apartment together, something between Fletcher's penthouse and Winona's old place. Not too ostentatious, but comfortable. Fitzgerald approved, claiming the master bedroom as his territory within hours. Winona continued teaching, though she cut back to part-time so she could devote more energy to the foundation. Fletcher discovered he loved being involved in education, visiting schools and talking to students about their dreams. He started a mentorship program pairing successful entrepreneurs with kids from low-income backgrounds. 2 years after the wedding, Winona got pregnant. They had talked about having kids but had not been actively trying, so the positive test was a surprise. A wonderful surprise. Fletcher cried when she showed him the test, actual tears running down his face while Winona laughed at him. "I am going to be a dad," he said in wonder. "A really rich dad," Winona teased. "This kid is going to be so spoiled. No way, we are raising them normal. Public school chores, the whole thing. Public school funded by your foundation, though. That is different. That is giving them opportunities, not spoiling them." Their daughter was born in October, a tiny perfect human with Winona's eyes and Fletcher's dark hair. They named her Charlotte Rose Irving, and she was immediately the center of their universe. Fletcher cut back his work schedule even further, refusing to miss a single moment of Charlotte's early months. He changed diapers and did midnight feedings and walked the floor with her when she could not sleep. Winona took pictures of him passed out on the couch with Charlotte asleep on his chest, both of them drooling. "You are a really good dad," Winona told him one night. "I am trying," Fletcher said. "I want to give her everything I did not have growing up. But also, I want to teach her the things I learned the hard way, about working hard and being kind and understanding that money is a tool, not a goal. She is lucky to have you. We are lucky to have each other." Charlotte grew into a happy, curious toddler who asked a million questions and loved books as much as her mother did. Fletcher read to her every night, the same battered copy of Where the Wild Things Are that his own mother had read to him. He watched his daughter grow and felt grateful every single day for the strange twist of fate that had brought him and Winona back together. One evening, when Charlotte was 3, Fletcher found an old box in the back of his closet. His high school yearbook was inside, yellowed and creased. He flipped through it until he found Winona's picture. She was smiling at the camera, so young and full of potential. Winona came into the bedroom and saw what he was looking at. "God, I look like a baby," she said, peering over his shoulder. You look beautiful, Fletcher said. Just like you do now. You are required to say that. It is in the marriage contract. Fletcher turned to a different page, his own senior photo. He barely recognized the skinny, serious kid staring back at him. I wish I could go back and tell him that everything was going to be okay. That he would meet you again, and you would love him back, and he would build a life better than anything he could imagine. Winona wrapped her arms around him from behind. Maybe he knew. Maybe that is why he kept going even when things were hard. He was holding on to hope that someday things would get better. Maybe. Fletcher closed the yearbook and pulled Winona into his lap. Thank you for crushing back, she laughed. That is a terrible line. It is true, though. I spent 20 years thinking you were completely out of my league. And then you kissed me in Brooklyn and told me you loved me, and my whole world changed. Our whole world changed, Winona corrected. I was stuck in a rut before you, teaching and going home and reading and repeating the cycle. You reminded me that life could be an adventure, that I could dream bigger than just surviving. We are a good team, the best team. From the nursery they heard Charlotte calling for them. Fletcher groaned. I thought she was asleep. She was asleep 30 minutes ago. That was a false alarm. Winona climbed off his lap. Your turn. Fletcher went to Charlotte's room and found her sitting up in her crib, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Cannot sleep, baby girl, he asked, scooping her up. Tell me a story, Charlotte demanded. What kind of story? A love story. About you and Mommy. Fletcher settled into the rocking chair with his daughter on his lap. Well, a long time ago, your daddy was just a regular guy who did not think he was special at all. And your Mommy was the smartest, most beautiful girl in school. Your daddy had a huge crush on her, but he was too scared to ever talk to her. That is silly, Charlotte said. Mommy is nice. She is very nice. But your daddy did not know that yet, so he went away and worked really hard and built a big company. And then one day, 20 years later, he went to a party and saw your Mommy again. And this time, he was brave enough to talk to her. And then they got married. Not right away. First they went on lots of dates and got to know each other. They fell in love slowly, like two puzzle pieces finding their perfect fit. And then your daddy asked your Mommy to marry him in a park with a silly cat named Fitzgerald watching. And your Mommy said yes. And they got married and started a foundation to help kids go to school. And then you came along and you made everything even better. Charlotte yawned hugely. I like that story. Me too, baby girl. Me too. He rocked her until she fell asleep again, then carried her back to the crib. Winona was waiting in the doorway, watching them with a soft expression. She wanted a love story, Fletcher explained. Of course she did. She is a romantic, just like her parents. They went back to their bedroom and climbed into bed together. Fitzgerald was already there, sprawled across the pillows like he owned the place. Fletcher pulled Winona close, her back against his chest, and breathed in the familiar scent of her shampoo. I love you, he said. I love you too. Outside, the city hummed with life and possibility. But inside their home, everything was quiet and perfect. Fletcher closed his eyes and thought about the long, improbable journey that had brought him here. From that gym in Queens to this bedroom in Manhattan. From the invisible poor kid to the billionaire, with a foundation and a family, and a love that felt like winning the lottery every single day. He had spent so many years chasing success, thinking that money and power would make him feel like he mattered. But he had been wrong. This was what mattered. Winona sleeping in his arms, Charlotte safe in the next room, the foundation changing lives. The simple, profound joy of being loved and loving in return. Fletcher had never expected his high school crush to crush back. He had never expected any of this. But life, he was learning, was full of beautiful surprises if you were brave enough to show up and take the risk. And he would choose this life, this love, this family every single time. In the morning, Charlotte would wake them up too early, demanding pancakes and stories. Fletcher would make a mess of the kitchen while Winona laughed at his terrible cooking skills. Fitzgerald would knock something expensive off a shelf. They would all pile onto the couch for cartoons, Charlotte tucked between her parents, and it would be chaotic and perfect. But for now, in this quiet moment, Fletcher just held his wife and felt grateful. Grateful for second chances. Grateful for courage. Grateful for the woman who had seen past the money and the success to the scared kid underneath who just wanted to be loved. She had seen him. Really seen him. And she had loved him anyway. That, Fletcher thought as he drifted off to sleep, was worth more than all the billions in the world. The foundation continued to grow over the years, expanding beyond just schools to include job training programs and small business loans for entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. Fletcher and Winona became a fixture at education conferences and charity events, always together, always supporting each other. Charlotte started kindergarten at a public school in their neighborhood, walking there with her mom 3 days a week. When Charlotte was 5, Winona got pregnant again. Twin boys this time, James and Henry, who were absolute terrors from the moment they learned to crawl. Fletcher loved every exhausting second of it. He coached Charlotte's soccer team. He attended every school play and concert. He made time for family dinners every night, no matter what else was happening with work. His old friends from the tech world thought he had gone soft. But Fletcher did not care. He knew what actually mattered now, and it was not another $1 billion or another company acquisition. It was watching his kids grow up. It was making love to his wife on lazy Sunday mornings. It was the small, ordinary moments that made up a life. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Fletcher and Winona went back to the high school where they had reconnected. It was late at night and they were technically trespassing, but Fletcher had made a generous donation to the Alumni Association, so he figured they would be forgiven. They stood in the empty gymnasium, hand in hand, looking at the space where they had first danced together. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Winona asked. "If you had not come to the reunion or if I had decided to stay home that night, all the time," Fletcher admitted. "It scares me, honestly. We were so close to missing each other completely." But we did not miss each other. We found each other exactly when we were supposed to. She turned to face him. "I do not believe in fate or destiny or any of that. But I do believe that sometimes, if you are very lucky, the universe gives you exactly what you need." Fletcher kissed her there in the empty gym, and it felt like coming full circle. From the awkward teenager watching from a distance to the man brave enough to cross the room. From the crush he thought was impossible to the love that defined his entire life. "Dance with me," he said, echoing his words from a decade before. "There is no music," Winona pointed out. "We do not need music." So they swayed together in the silent gymnasium, holding each other close. And Fletcher thought about the long journey that had brought them here. The failures and successes. The fear and courage. The moment when everything changed because he decided to take a chance on the girl who had always been out of his league, except she had never been out of his league. She had been right there all along, waiting for him to see what was possible. Waiting for him to believe that he deserved to be loved. Waiting for him to be brave enough to cross the room and ask her to dance. He had crossed the room. She had said yes, and everything else had followed. They left the school and drove home to their kids and their cat and their beautifully messy life. Charlotte was staying up past her bedtime, teaching the twins how to build a pillow fort. Fletcher's mother, who babysat whenever they went out, was asleep on the couch. "Mommy, Daddy." Charlotte threw herself at them. "We made the best fort ever. Come see." Fletcher looked at Winona and she looked at him, and they both started laughing. This was not the glamorous billionaire life that people imagined. It was better. It was real. He crawled into the pillow fort with his kids while Winona woke up his mother and made tea. The twins immediately began using him as a jungle gym. Charlotte told him an elaborate story about dragons and princesses. And Fletcher felt the same certainty he had felt that night in Brooklyn when Winona first kissed him. This was it. This was everything. Years from now, when people asked him about his greatest achievement, he would not talk about the satellite company or the billions of dollars or even the foundation. He would talk about this. About showing up to a reunion he almost skipped. About finding the courage to talk to the woman he had admired from afar for so long. About building a life and a family with someone who saw him for who he really was. He would talk about how his crush had crushed back, and how that single moment of reciprocated feeling had changed absolutely everything. And he would smile, the same dopey smile Rebecca always teased him about, and feel grateful for every single day.